Okay, so a brief programming note. We're only going to work on hard questions. I've taken these questions from the SAT Question Bank. It's a great resource. And I am only going to work on the hard ones because, first of all, you can get these questions right with some practice. So you don't have to worry that these are above your level. Wherever you're at right now, we can learn the skills in a very technical way on the hard questions, and you can do it. Nothing is beyond, any person who can read. The reason we're doing that is because your intuition will help you on easy questions and maybe even medium questions. Your intuition may help you on some of the hard questions too. I want to be in a position where our intuition is of the least value to us to begin with, so we can use the technical skills that I'm talking about to get questions right. I want this to be of value to everyone. I believe it will be. And I just want you to know that you will see some easier questions in the test. This is an opportunity for us to learn. A great phrase from pianist James Moody that I took from a teacher of mine is practice slow, practice what you don't know. So working on some challenging material will give us the best chance to look at things that we may not know. Okay, so let's do some work here. I'll read the entire prompt. A recent study tracked the number of bee species present in 27 New York apple orchards over a 10-year period. Blank found that when wild growth near an orchard was cleared, the number of different bee species visiting the orchard decreased. Okay, so here's the thing. I wanted to read the whole thing so that you felt like you were on solid ground, but I want to pay attention to the fact that if I have a period here, there's a very good chance that I don't care about what comes first. Now, if you're on a question that asks about, a transition question, which you'll see videos of mine about that as well. If you're talking about words like however or therefore at the beginning of a sentence, then of course it matters what comes first. But it doesn't matter here because we're asked a punctuation question. The only differences are here. The words are the same, and there's some question of where to put a comma or whether or not to use a colon. All right. So the best way to have begun this question as a test taker is to look at the question and the answer choices first. Okay, we're doing a conventions of standard English question, and the punctuation differences are all that matters. With that said, if I began this question, I would not even read about our bee species, as interesting as that might be. I'm literally only thinking about this sentence. Okay? Now, the first step, start strong. Start with the strongest punctuation. Not that it's most likely to be right, but it's most likely to be easy to eliminate or prove correct. Right? So you're either going to be able to say the strongest thing works and therefore it's right or likely to be right, or the strongest thing doesn't work. Another way to think about this is strong punctuation has the clearest rules, right? So maybe I should say strong punctuation marks have the clearest rules, right? So for instance, as we look through this, we have commas, which are very flexible, and we have a colon. Okay, so if you recall from earlier, to use a colon, we need a full sentence first, right? That's the strong rule about a colon. So run our little heuristic, our little test. Hey, guess what? I have to tell you something. Entomologist Heather Grab. Can you tell that that doesn't feel like a full sentence? If so, we know that that's out. Okay. So now we're left with our options about commas. With commas, I want you to think that I'll use the comma if necessary, and if it seems at all unnecessary, I'm not using it. Even if it sounds good, I don't want you to just say, I feel a pause there, so I'm going to use a comma. That's an intuitive approach that is not going to serve you well in the SAT. We need to change our intuitions, have some test-specific intuitions, if you will. That test-specific intuition should be, don't use it unless it's absolutely vital and necessary. Okay. So that's one way that you could think about these commas and make a choice. I do want to give you one more technical rule, which is 9 times out of 10, if you have a subject and a verb, you separate them with 0 commas or 2 commas. And if you have 2 commas, obviously you have some extra stuff in between. So you almost never are going to separate a subject and a verb with 1 comma. The only reason for you to do that would be in a very complex situation where you had like a subject that was made up of a list of multiple entities or something like that. But in almost every case, you're not going to put a subject and a verb broken apart by 1 comma, because the purpose of a comma is to break things apart, and subject and verbs go together to make a sentence in most cases, right? So there's a verb here, found. And the question is, who or what found? I'm going to use that phrase a lot. You're going to hear me say who or what a lot. Who or what found? Well, entomologist Heather Grab was the person who found something. Okay, so I don't like the idea of putting a comma here. We can definitely get rid of that one because the subject is within this phrase, entomologist Heather Grab. Okay, so I've crossed off A, I've crossed off D. I left the best for last here, which is B. B is going to be wrong as well. But that's the hardest one to prove incorrect. Now, you might think, well, the entomologist found something. So Heather, that's unnecessary. Her name is unnecessary. We just need to say entomologist. Notice what I said, though. I said the entomologist found, not entomologist found. That difference may seem unimportant to you, but that's the difference between whether or not answer choice B is correct and answer choice C is correct. If it said the entomologist, you wouldn't need it, but you could put commas after entomologist and after grab, such that the subject would be the entomologist and the verb would be found. We don't have that, however. Right? We don't have what is called an article. An entomologist would also work, or the entomologist, but we don't have that. So the best answer is C. Now look, I told you could just say, if I don't need the comma, don't use it. That's absolutely true and a very useful way of thinking about the question. But I want you to have technical rules you can rely on so that you don't have to be making intuitive decisions in all but, the most challenging and opaque questions, right? So sometimes I describe that as a Slavic mistake. No offense to, folks who speak Slavic languages. Some of my favorite students have been folks from Russia and Ukraine. But if you notice the way native Russian speakers speak English, sometimes they leave out the articles. They'll say, I went to game instead of I went to the game. They'll say, I flew in airplane. I come to town, right? Sometimes we speak that way too, but they leave out those articles because there's no articles actually, as far to my understanding, in Russian. So they leave those out, and that's just technically a mistake in our language, right? So you can think about that mistake in those terms, and you can also think about the rules that we've talked about with commas. We're going to see a bunch of these, okay? And I'll go faster as we get through this document, but there is the first one. Best answer is C, no punctuation at all.